So I'll talk a little bit about what harsh light is, and then a bit about tonight's conversation, and then hand them over to the speakers. So harsh light started 2 years ago, almost exactly, actually. It was right at the start of the pandemic, and all the programs had been canceled, and myself and my colleague, Dave McLeavy, former colleague, had been thinking about all of these questions of surviving at a very difficult time. And basically, we had all these different questions of how we were going to cope, and what artists are doing, what we're doing in this landscape, in this climate. So we decided to make harsh light as a place for all of these questions to be explored in a more public way, and invite practitioners whose work we like, whose approaches we would like to center, to come on board and have conversations. Broadly, the kinds of things we talk about on harsh light are, to begin with, it was obviously very much COVID related, but now it's kind of expanded somewhat to include just all the kinds of work that we do behind the work, I suppose. So like the conditions, what we do to kind of make it possible for our practices to flourish. So yeah, tonight's conversation is going to be one of those, and I'm super excited to have Abhaya Rajani Aaliah Qureshi and Shivani Patel to speak with us tonight. And they're all artists and part of a wonderful collective called A Particular Reality. And A Particular Reality formed 4 years ago, and they are a collective of students as well as educators working in sort of art schools that are committed to a more equitable and non-hierarchical approach to art education, and also explicitly looks at racism in institutions. And they've been having these amazing gatherings over the last couple of years, and I was really, really delighted when they approached Bloc Projects to ask us whether we could use harsh light as a platform to center some of these conversations. And tonight's conversation between our speakers will be on casteism, which affects them quite directly as South Asian diaspora artists. I will let them, of course, talk more about that. But before I do that, something that we do a lot on Harsh Light, with it being a webinar kind of format, is a somatic grounding kind of exercise. And this is something you're more than welcome to not take part in if you just want to lay low for a few minutes. But I kind of like to do it to kind of bring the room together a little bit, because we're all in different places. And so one that I thought about doing tonight, a very simple one, was just to bring to our own attention our different senses. So as we're all sat in different rooms, we're just going to try and bring our attention, first of all, to what we're looking at. So you can have a little scan of the room. I'm in my spare room in the house, so I'm just taking that in. And then we'll bring it to our sound. What sounds you can hear, even if it's nothing, just kind of bring your attention to listening. And then what you can smell, even if there might not be any strong aromas. Again, just draw your attention to sensing what you can smell. And then the taste. You might have eaten, you might have just drank something. Bring your attention to your taste, what you can taste in your mouth. And finally, touch. I'm just touching my hands, but you might be touching your legs, you might be touching the fabric on the seat that you're on, or just the arms on your chair. Just bring your attention to that again. Okay, so that was a very simple exercise of just orienting ourselves in your room. So thank you for doing that with me. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our three speakers tonight. We're going to begin actually with a collective reading that Abhaya has very kindly volunteered to read aloud for us. And the piece is actually from a speech that was written by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. And I'm going to write their name in the chat for our BSL interpreters. Right, 1 second. And for anybody who might be interested, not just for our BSL interpreters, if you want to look this wonderful person up. And yes, so the piece is just a little extract from a speech that he had written in the 1930s. And it was deemed a bit too controversial to be read aloud in public. And it was called Annihilation of Caste. So tonight we're just going to set the scene by reading a short extract from there. So Abhaya, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Sunshine, for this wonderful introduction. I'm Abhaya Rajani. My pronouns are she and her. I'm practicing artist, educator, filmmaker, and this is the first time I'm introducing myself as a Dalit woman. And if you like, Alia, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first, and then Shivani, and then I will start our collective reading. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. My name is Alia. My pronouns are she and her, and I have just graduated this summer from doing a bachelor's degree in photography at Manchester School of Art.
Hi, I'm Shivani. My pronouns are she, her, and same as Alia, a recent graduate of Manchester School of Art from photography. Very excited.
We'll start our collective reading. We'll stop at each full stop, and then one other person will start. So I'll start first. It is a pity that caste even today has its defenders.
The defences are many.
It is defended on the ground that the caste system is but another name of division of labour. And if division of labour is a necessary feature of every civilised society, then it is argued that there is nothing wrong in the caste system.
Now, the first thing that is to be urged against the view is that the caste system is not merely a division of labour.
It is also a division of labourers.
Civilised society undoubtedly needs division of labour.
But in no civilised society is division of labour accompanied by this unnatural division of labourers into watertight compartments.
The caste system is not merely division of labourers, which is quite different from division of labour. It is hierarchy in which divisions of labourers are graded one above the other.
In no other country is the division of labour accompanied by this gradation of labourers.
There is also a third point of criticism against this view of the caste system.
This division of labourers is not spontaneous. It is not based on natural aptitudes.
Social and individual efficiency requires us to develop the capacity of an individual to the point of competency to choose and to make his own career.
This principle is violated in the caste system insofar as it involves an attempt to appoint tasks to individuals in advance, selected not on the basis of trained original capacities, but on that of the social status of the parents.
Looked at from another point of view, this stratification of occupation, which is the result of the caste system, is positively pernicious.
Industry is never static.
It undergoes rapid and abrupt changes.
With such changes, an individual must be free to change his occupation.
Without such freedom to adjust himself to changing circumstances, it would be impossible for him to gain his livelihood.
Now, the caste system will not allow Hindus to take to occupations where they are wanted if they do not belong to them by a heredity.
If a Hindu is seen to starve rather than to take a new occupation not assigned to his caste, the reason is to be found in the caste system.
By not permitting readjustment of occupations, caste becomes a direct cause of much of the unemployment we see in the country.
As a form of division of labor, the caste system suffers from another serious defect.
The division of labor brought about by the caste system is not division based on choice.
Individual sentiment, individual preference has no place in it.
It is based on the dogma of predestination.
Considerations of social efficiency would compel us to recognize that the greatest evil in the industrial system is not so much poverty and the suffering that it involves, as the fact that so many persons have callings which make no appeal to those who are engaged in them.
Such callings constantly provoke one to aversion, it will and the desire to evade.
That's the end of our text. If we will talk about what we think about the text briefly. Anyone, Shivani, do you want to go first?
I think it's an interesting block of text because it sort of shows what is prioritized within the caste system and what values it has and the impact it has on society.
For me, it was interesting about this line, which really stuck with me, that it is a division of laborers and not labor, and how it can divide people and can create these boundaries or walls rather, which cannot be broken no matter what. And then the idea of occupation as predestined and not something which you choose, which is so, it feels right now in the contemporary time, it feels so out of, it doesn't, it feels so unnatural and feels not even possible. Like how can you not choose your own occupation? But then the system which is based, which is there and it's still there for generations and for centuries, it disturbs me a lot.
I think I agree with that. That was the quote that sort of stuck out to me as well, because it's like something that you can't choose, but it's also something that you can't even change. It's like you're stuck with it. So you don't really have a say in it, and it's kind of unfair. Yeah.
That's our interpretation, and I think that is going to be there with us for a long time. I think when you read something, you think about that instantly, but then later it stays with you, and then it does have its life of its own in your mind. So it would be interesting how that goes. We want to first situate the conversation by talking about casteism. There are different myths and there are different justifications of casteism which exist. There is this one myth which I would like to go through is the mythical belief that 4 sections of the caste hierarchy system have emerged out of body of God, which is Brahma. And the Brahmins were considered to be on top, which came from Brahma's head. And these are the people who are priests, teachers, and intellectuals who had the right to educate themselves and educate others. So these are come at the top of the hierarchy. The second is Kshatriya, which are warriors and rulers. For them, it is believed that they have come from Brahma's arm. And the third position, which is Vaishna, and these are the farmers, traders, or merchants, which were considered to be coming from his tithes. And at the bottom of the system are the Shudras, believed by many people that they have come from Brahma's feet. And then there is another hierarchy, or at the bottom, there are untouchables who aren't even part of the body, who haven't come from the body of God. And they are the one who are at the utmost bottom of the hierarchy. And my ancestors were formal untouchables, and who didn't have the right to have the rights. And it's so interesting how the positioning of the body, which is standing tall, but then you can see in sections and how that has the links, and then arms, head is the brain, which is considered to be the top. And then these are the people who are intellectuals, considered to be intellectuals or educated, and the arms, which are the strength. And it's interesting how that has been justified through the body. Yeah, it's a bit long monologue kind of thing. It's so strange to not hear like anything else but yourself. So yeah, I'll get used to it that. What do you guys think about this? Like, or yeah, just it was interesting how we were talking about that this is the first time we were talking about this.
Yeah, I think that's something very interesting to me, because I'd never heard of that before, and it's very different in Pakistan, like our interpretation of the caste system and how that came about. So with us, it's very, very separate to religion. We don't tie those two things together at all. In Islam, which is the religion I follow, we kind of promote equality for everybody. We don't have this hierarchy sort of thing, and people get that twisted with culture. So we believe that it kind of, how you were talking about like the fishing community and the farmer community, that still ties in as well. So it's more the jobs that people had back in the day and how that's passed down generations within their family. And that's what's kind of kept the caste system going. So you've got the fishing community, cobblers, brickmakers, sweepers, people in the military, people who had sort of religious roles in the community. And that kind of separates them, and that's what we consider the caste system to be, and that's what's kept it going.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how the caste system correlates to a different part of God, and how you're born into it and you don't really get a choice of being able to integrate with other levels, and seeing if you marry someone who's of a lower caste, it's really frowned upon and discouraged. I just think it's an interesting correlation. And even in career as well, how we wouldn't get an option to say anything. We would just be, okay, well, this is what we're going to do, and this is what our history is, and we just have to accept it. And I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, it was, for me, it was really interesting to hear from Aaliah about how caste exists in Pakistan. It exists on social level, and how even though different countries, but it still have this similar ideas and similar systems of discriminations in different manners and different forms, but still casteism. Yeah. Shivani, do you want to go with the further question if you want to?
Yeah, I think one of the questions was, why do we think that the caste system is still intact and still relevant? I just think it's interesting how I think it's been like dismantled by the government in India, but the social communities still like keep it together and keep it going. I just want to explore that.
Yeah.
I think I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that we said before, it's not something that's been written down, like it's not an official document or like a legal thing. It's just a sort of social structure, social hierarchy that is present, and nobody kind of knows where it came from or where it stemmed from, but it's just kind of there and it's ingrained into everybody. Yeah, and the fact that it's still going is quite significant.
I think my understanding is like this idea of pure blood. So it like, especially among the upper caste, it's like the people who have the purest blood, like in terms of Brahmins, and that has to be kept intact. And that's why the marriage within the similar caste has to be followed so that they could be they could be kept, like the blood should be kept to purest. And it just like is interesting how that relates to the ideas of like pure ideologies and pure identities. And what does it mean in terms of discrimination? It's still discrimination, and it's interesting how there are systems which are kept in place to justify these discriminations as well.
I think as well, it's like some families may think that it's like we want to continue that culture and be pure blood, but also like, what will other people think if like we integrate with someone who's of a lower caste, and then it's like their whole family values are questioned by like the community. So it's, in a way, it's just sort of like just pushing people to sort of go with the social norms, which is such an outdated concept.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like there is no again, like about the personal choice. What about the person who want to choose and not want to? The choices cannot be collective, can they? But they do exist in, especially the choices about personal lives, but then they are linked to these traditions, or linked to social shame as well, in a way. And it's
Yeah, I think one thing people do say to justify it is like it's a sort of safety net for them. So marrying someone within the same caste is like, well, we know their morals, we know their lifestyle, there's no language barriers and that kind of thing, which is also understandable. But I feel like in today's day and age, it is used for the wrong reasons. Like the reason they put forward is, as you were saying, like the pure blood thing. Yeah.
I'll go next with the question. How does caste affect inside and outside of India and Pakistan? How caste has different ways of existing in South Asian community? I think we started talking about that already, didn't we? About the relationships, but we can elaborate that. Would you like to? Anyone wants to go?
I think marrying outside of the caste is a big thing, and that's like the film we're going to show you guys later on as well. So for example, I know a family where the mum and dad, as I was saying before, they want their sons to marry within the same caste, and that's not always great because their lifestyle might be similar, but it's also about the individual, and they might not get along with the person that their parents put forward. And I've known a family that's done that, and there's been several failed marriages, and it's not always the best option. So obviously, there's that kind of influence and that impact with the caste system in terms of family relationships as well.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, because it feels like even if you are trying to respect the tradition and still continue the culture of doing it, it may not be like what you want for yourself and for your own heart.
Yeah.
And then, but even the opposite of like challenging that and marrying someone who's outside of your caste, it also causes a lot of like disruption and a lot of like anxiety because it's not accepted so easily in the community. I think it's still very relevant to today, like as you said, Alia, like your experiences, that's current. It's not something that's happening in the past. Because I feel like a lot of people do think that the caste system it's such an old system, but it's still like in practice today. And I think a lot of people generally may assume that it's has discontinued, it isn't relevant anymore. But yeah, I think it's an interesting way to see that it is still very present in our lives. and
Yeah.
still there's still so many like recent experiences regarding the caste system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like about the relationships and how they exist. People who try to protest against the caste system and try to challenge the caste system. There have been also like cases of intermarriages where the couple get married or get involved in intercaste marriages, and then there is like killing of those people, and it's by their own families because they have tried to go beyond or challenge the caste system, and it just then you question, it's the system is there, but then it is there for what? If I can't love whom I can love, or who I want to love, or who I love really dearly, and if I can't be with that person because of the structure which is there, then it's hard to exist in this kind of system when you can't be who you are, or who you want to be, or whom you want to be with, and it makes you question these systems more and more. Who is it for then?
I feel like with the system in place, you can't make everybody happy then, because it's either, if it's your family putting that pressure on you, it's like, do I choose my family's happiness or do I choose my own happiness? Because if you marry someone for the sake of somebody else, are you really happy? Like, you've got to live with that decision, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so true. It's like, okay, you get married, and as according to your parents' permission, or according to your family's permission, but then if you're not going to be happy within that, then you did listen to someone, and then you're not happy, and how can you be tried to be happy when you are not? And that is yeah. Another question which we wanted to ask is, how do people recognize which caste other people belong to? And that is, I find that very fascinating. How I can go first. Like how I always been asked, what is my surname? And now my surname is Rajani, which I changed from the surname which I was born into. The Rajani is my mom's name, my mother's first name, and it was interesting when I was changing that people were like, why don't you want to show your caste, or don't you want to like why are you ashamed of it? But it isn't just about being ashamed or being proud of it. It just can I deny that completely? And can I go beyond that? And it's just interesting how there are certain signs or certain labels which people would ask. It feels like these are genuine questions, they just want to know my surname. But then how that has its own link of, okay, so what we were talking about, yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, I just find it interesting how generally among first greetings, if you don't know someone, it'll be like, oh, what's your last name and where are you from? And then that really, especially like where you're from, really dictates what caste you are possibly in. And in a way that sort of just like directs how they are going to like treat you then in the future, which I think is like, yeah, I feel like you have a right to protect then if you don't want to say your last name, even though it can be like a private thing, or if people are like, oh well, it's just your last name, it doesn't matter that much, but it tells a lot about your history and how you'll be treated, and if you'll be what sort of attitude you'll get from people, especially if you are of a lower caste, because people really do just have that negative attitude of just dismissing that person and just being like, oh, well, they have nothing of value to offer. Even if they are a genuinely good person, it seems as though you'll always be in that like category of just lower caste or like untouchable, which I feel like is such an unfair way of talking to people and sort of dictating your respect towards that. And I just don't think it should be considered, really, like, because it is such an old system. But there we go, it's still relevant within conversations today of like how you'll be spoken to.
Yeah, definitely. I think another thing as well, another way you can kind of tell what people like caste they belong to is, well, I've had this before, it's like they look at like the color of your skin, like if you're fair skinned or dark skinned in terms of like where you come from. And it's like, if you're fair skinned, then you must be of a higher caste because they don't have to work, so they can stay indoors all the time and that kind of thing. So they take that into consideration and completely just make their own judgment of you, that kind of thing. They don't need to ask anything else. They take one look at you and they're like, right, okay, I'm going to treat you in this way because you look like this, so you must be from this caste, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there was like another thing is the upper caste person would, there was one incident which was like, there was an upper caste classmate of mine and who was like, you don't look like lower caste person. And it's like, that is that like, it's that supposed to be a compliment? Because it isn't. It's still like confirming your prejudices against one caste and another caste. And it's again like how you identify with casteism, how there are these signs and how there are these understanding, and they can lead to these prejudices. So you wouldn't understand why this person is treating me like that, but then in their head it's because, you know, this person has this surname, this person has this color, it's a fairer skin or lighter skin or darker skin. And then it's just so problematic when these, like, being existing out there can also be a problem for someone else. Or you know, like that would be identified. Okay, so this person is that, so it should be treated like that, as you were saying earlier. And it just so it really disturbs you. So being a person in itself it's not a choice. It always connects you with your caste, and that's very interesting. Are we taking a break now, or
Yeah.
Yes, I forgot. I am so sorry for all the participants for forgetting to mention this. I'm quite out of practice doing these harsh lets. So because we also have BSL interpretation, we tend to take a 10-minute break in between to have, just to give signers and our deaf audiences a break. So I'm really sorry to interrupt this great conversation, but I have so many questions for you as well. And I was putting them in the chat, but hope maybe we can follow them up in the second part of the conversation. So some of them is like a little bit of a provocative conversation is how caste factors in your own lives, and how you might, have you caught yourselves making judgments about people, and if so, how do they color the way you see your fellow South Asian diasporic peers? So maybe, but that maybe is for the second half. I'm just really pleased to be listening into this conversation. I'm learning so much already. Thank you. But let's just take a 10-minute break. It's now, let's call it 7:40. We'll come back at 7:50 and continue on the second part. So we'll see you shortly. Okay. Hello, everyone. I don't know if our speakers are back yet. I'll just wait for them to show up. Hello.
Hi.
Great. We have some people who have just joined us for the second half, so I'm just going to say a quick hello to you as well. Thanks for coming. And thanks again for to the speakers for contextualizing what caste has meant in your lives, and giving us a broader perspective of caste. I was particularly taken by, Abhaya, what you said about caste and the body, and how like the head, the arm, the thighs, and the feet are the places of origin for all these different castes, from the sort of the main deity. I would love to hear you all speak a little bit more about that, and more in relation of caste in your lives, and how it has sort of like woven and entangled the way you work, your art approaches, and how you also relate to your South Asian diasporic kin and peers. But I do know that before we continue with the conversation, that Abhaya has prepared a short snippet of a film that you've worked on that also tells the story of caste in a very specific way. And it's a very short 4-minute film, and it's got subtitles. So for any of our deaf audiences, hopefully that will be of use to you. So we will start with our second half with this film, and then a continuation of the talk, more in relation to our speakers' lives and how caste has factored in their lives. And I will leave maybe, let's say 15 minutes at the end, 10-15 minutes for a few questions from any of our attendees. I certainly have a few that I've already written in the chat, so I don't forget. But for anybody else who's also interested or just want to make notes or make any comments, please do use the chat. It's a really nice way to kind of collectively remember what we've spoken about. Okay, so that being said,
I just wanted to
yes.
mention that I made this film with my partner Sam McNeil, who is also in the audience. I just wanted to make sure, because I'm not the only one who want to take the credit. He's there too. Like he is a co-director and co-maker of the film.
Oh, okay. Yes, sorry, my mistake. Thank you, Sam, as well for having made this film. Yeah, Abhaya, I'll leave it to you. If you want to, do you want to introduce it briefly, or shall we just go straight into it?
I think we should just get into it. Yeah.
All right then. Yeah, there we go.
अजून तसे कोण बोलणार शब्द आहे अजून कोणी काही सांगू शकत नाही मला तू कोणी पण तसं शब्दाच्या बाहेर नाही असं कोणीच नाही. अजून आम्ही 3 भाऊ वाडीत तर कोणी नाही, त्यांच्याकडे वयाने असतील पण इथं विचारल्याशिवाय अजून, आणि आपण ते वाईट बघणार नाही त्यांचं.
म्हणजे कसे भेटलात तुम्ही एकमेकांना, किंवा आणि असं चालेल विचार
सांगा. फेसबुक वरती फ्रेंड रिक्वेस्ट केलेली, मग आमच्या वाडीत म्हणजे महेश करत म्हणून होता, मला वाटलं काय तोच आहे, थोडं चेक करत राहिली नाही, मग हा होता, म्हणजे हा फ्रेंड म्हणून बोलायचा. मग असं वेळ झाला, त्याने प्रपोज केलं.
आणि मग तेव्हा तुम्हाला म्हणजे मग लग्नाचं वगैरे कसं काय हे झालं?
म्हणजे आणि आपल्या घरात सांगितलं, म्हणजे त्याने लगेच सांगितलेलं शेवट मुलगी बघितली आहे मी, मग मी लग्न करणार आहे वगैरे. मग ती यायची मी इकडे, आणि त्यांनी मग एक दिवस असं सांगितलं लग्न करूया, आणि मग लग्न केलं मी.
आणि तुम्ही इथल्याच गावाचे आहात?
नाही,
अच्छा अच्छा.
वाईट होत हिला तुम्ही सांगतो वाईट होणार, नंतर तू हे लग्न करणार, नंतर तुला आई बाबा भेटणार नाही, यार मी ते सांगत होतं आधीच सांगत होतं लग्नाच्या आधी. त्याच्यामुळे हे तुला बेभान होणार, ते आधीच सांगत होतं, आता काय करणार.
आणि म्हणजे तुम्ही तुमच्या पेरेंट्सला सांगितलं की मला लग्न करायचं आहे, मग त्यांचा कसा रिस्पॉन्स?
असं सांगितलं ना, लग्न केल्यावरती सांगितलं, कारण ते देणार नाही होते, कारण घरात माझ्या परमिशन द्यायचे नाही, असं म्हणजे नकोच करू म्हणून सांगायचे. म्हणजे दुसऱ्या जातीत असं करायला द्यायचे नाही. झालं त्यांना वचन दिलेलं ना, म्हणजे लग्न करेन म्हणून. आता जर ह्याच्या सोबत लग्न केलं नाही, ह्याने स्वतःच काहीतरी करून घेतलं तर मग आता ते पण राहू शकतात, ह्याने स्वतःच्या जीवाचं काहीतरी करून घेतलं, त्यामुळे मी वचन मोडलेलं नाही. म्हणजे ते पण असू द्या, हा पण असू दे. म्हणजे आपल्यामुळे दुसऱ्याच्या जीवाची काय करा.
ते खूप म्हणजे प्रेम महत्वाचं आहे ना. आणि
सगळीकडे प्रेम होते पण महत्वाचे होते, हा पण
बरोबर. आणि मग तुम्ही जे सांगितल्यानंतर की म्हणजे आता लग्न तुमचं झालं,
तेव्हा माझा भाऊ भडकलेला, पण नंतर त्यांनी फोन केला म्हणजे दुसऱ्या भावाने वगैरे. मग आता ठीक आहे केलंस तर, फक्त आता काय एवढंच की घरात घेत नाही, बाकी बोलतात ती वहिनी वगैरे माझी, आई बोलते, बाबा बोलत नाही. 3 भाऊ बोलतात, म्हणजे 5 भाऊ आणि मी एकटी आहे.
लग्न करायच्या आधी ठेवलं आमचं आई बाळ टाकून शकतो. मला मुली 5, तिला भाऊ 5. काय का तरी तुला हे काय सांगतो, आपण एकट्याचा ह्यात बांध करू शकत नाही ना, 5 जणांचं मन आहे.
पण मग इथे तुम्हाला म्हणजे मला असं वाटतं की हे तुमचं घर म्हणजे आता खरंच आहे, तुमचंच आहे म्हणजे असं
नवरा सांगतो ना माझा, हे तुझं आहे.
Do you want to talk about what do you think about that? Or
You're on mute, Alia.
Alia, you're
Oh my bad. Okay, so I was basically saying I think it's quite interesting because I like the line that was it said something along the lines of, for one person's desire you can't hurt the heart of 5 others. That was quite nice, but then also seeing it from the family's perspective too, like they obviously had a negative impact, but then the brothers eventually came around and the mum came around, so no matter what decision you make, even if you kind of go outside of your caste and you make the decisions for yourself, your family will always be there no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how she had a fear of not wanting to even tell her family before getting married, and the impact that has of like how much she obviously cares for her parents and parents' love and her family's love, that she was just too scared to even say anything to them. And something like the caste system has such a like importance over family, and in a way it's like a duty of like you shouldn't have done that, and you know, knowing better. But I think it was nice in the end how they, you know, were able to still be together, and how her family have eventually come around. I think that's nice because I think it's impacts a lot of people. It's interesting how it seems as though it seems like it's such an old like system, but it still has such an impact on people's lives, and even the husband who is saying, oh, I didn't want my husband to hurt himself because of it if they didn't get married. And it just shows how like even within the partnership, the impact it has to each other in the marriage as well.
Yeah, I think it's really great to do. We are making this film right now, we're in the process, so it's really great to hear from you guys as well, because it's different when you are making film within 2 people and just have your own world and you know what they're saying. But it's really interesting to hear from you too as well. And yeah, like I think we didn't mention that in the film, but we're still editing it. She isn't allowed to go to her parents, she just can talk to them on phone. And when she said that, it's just I couldn't think about like how do you exist, like you know that your parents would be there, and you know when it feels that you wouldn't have the access to talk to them or to go to their house. And I think the 3 brothers and the mom does talk to her, but she isn't allowed to go to their parents' house, to her parents' house, and it's just the idea of it that, she says that in the beginning. We haven't we haven't added that in the clip, but it is interesting how she says that she has been always taught not to get involved with lower caste person, and that's what she's taught when she first saw the same surname as Karat, and she was saying that how it wasn't, she thought it was Karat from her own caste, and then it turned out to be different Karat. But yeah, it's just interesting how what does it look like in the relationship, in marriage and in families when they're involved.
Yeah, I think as well it raises the question of like, when do we even hear about these things? When is it ever really spoken about with casteism? Because I never learned about casteism through school. It was just like through family and like stories that we'd heard from like my grandparents from India, what they would see. Fortunately, they didn't really experience having like negative impacts from being of lower caste. But it was things like people of lower caste would have to take off their shoes when walking past someone of a higher caste, and like if they were walking in front of you, you'd have to stop and like, I don't know, like look down or look away, just to sort of, so that you wouldn't like disrespect them in any way. But I just think it's interesting how even when, say, it was in India, those experiences are very like prevalent, and it changes your whole behavior of how you are in that environment. Yeah, just trying to think. It reminded me of what you were saying as well, Abhaya, about is it touching like ghee? I think it was like a story about that. I don't know if you remember. I think that's interesting as well.
Yeah, it was. It's written in Annihilation of Caste. It's a very big speech. So in the beginning part, he says that there has been like a case where a lower caste person was serving ghee, which is butter, to fellow lower caste people, and he got beaten up because he isn't having butter. It's considered to be only privileged caste can have that, and to have that by a lower caste, it's like they have diluted their caste in a way, and it's, yeah, I think you have gotten really well with that, like the further question which I was going to ask, like when did we first hear or experience casteism? And it's Alia, do you want to go first? Like, do you want to talk? I think we already started talking about that.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Never mind. So I didn't hear about it from my own family, actually. My mum kind of sheltered me from this whole sort of topic, because she from a young age she was just like, I don't want you to know about any of that because I see the impact it has. So she didn't tell me what caste I was from. She didn't even tell me up until like last year whereabouts in Pakistan I'm from. So when people ask, where are you from, so they can kind of suss you out, I wouldn't have the answer for it, so they wouldn't be able to sort of read me and judge me based off that. So I actually heard about it from someone my age or younger, like that sort of age group, and he kind of saw like that I didn't have a clue about what he's talking about, and he kind of broke it down for me and told me about sort of all the different castes and what they mean, where they come from, and that kind of stuff. And I thought it was quite interesting that people my age and even the generation below us, like, they know so much about it and that it's so relevant in their everyday life, even living in the UK, that like someone like me doesn't know about it. And I'm older, so you probably would expect that I do, but yeah, learning from someone younger than me, it was quite eye-opening and kind of a bit concerning. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was very personal. It's like when I was born and raised in India, so it's different exposure which you get to these discriminations. I was 6 to 7 year old when I was like in the school wearing like a nice pink frock because I love to dress up and love to wear nice clothes. So I was, 6 to 7 year old wearing this pink dress. And so the upper caste girl of the same age as me, she spat on my dress, on my pink dress, and said that you don't deserve to look good. And this is again 6 and 7 year old of the same age. And at that time, I just thought there was something wrong with me, and there was something wrong me being or looking beautiful, if that was. And as 6 and 7 year old person, as a kid, it just that was the first ever memory. And it was interesting how the same person's mum was our teacher, a primary teacher, and she said to one of my friend, that you don't go to Abhaya's home and eat because she's from lower caste. And I couldn't understand what is this, and I asked my parents, and they didn't want to, of course, expose me to that, and they said that there is nothing wrong with you. This is the mentality and the teachings of the like, of course, at that age they wouldn't explain me in this manner, but they said that there is nothing wrong with you. It's really their fault, and they are the one who are wrong and not you. And I remember, like, as this pink dress, which was so beautiful, and it wasn't just the spitting on that dress, it was like spitting on my body and my identity. And it just and I so for so many years I just didn't want to remember that story, but I knew back in my head it was always present. And it stays with you as a person. And whenever you self-doubt yourself, that is the first question, that is the first thing which comes in your mind, that you don't deserve this because and even now I understand, of course, this is a discriminative behavior and discriminative attitude which has been fed to this other girl as well from such an early age. And then it's like, it's not just me who was infected by that spit, but also that other person who spat on the little girl, and it just feels so horrible. Quite personal.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story that my auntie told me. She went over to a friend's house when she was very little, and another friend joined them, and they were all eating, and they were all Pakistani, I think, but from different castes. And after one of the friends had left, she overheard the other friend's mum say, "Oh, okay, this girl ate from this plate because she's of a lower caste, like throw it out. We don't want that. We don't want those sort of that kind of thing." And that stuck with me because I think that's just horrible.
Yeah, it's just you like the things like the plates and water or these kind of things, they should be accessible to everyone, isn't it, like in any society. But then these are like the little, as even like I was saying about ghee, which is butter, and it's like these are the things that also have the identities of their own, which are associated with certain caste, and with they also have hierarchies in a way, the objects or the material, or so it's just so frightening as well. Let's go to the next question. It's quite interesting to hear about like how our understandings of these things as well. Like for me, coming from born and brought up in India, and you have the heritage of Pakistan, and Shivani has heritage of India but born and brought up in the UK, but how casteism link us together in a way.
Yeah, because we all have different perspectives with that, and it's like impacted us in so many different ways. It's really sad to hear the stories because it's just so relevant. You would just think that maybe you'd be taught better and, you know, treat people with respect, and something like that shouldn't be relevant. But then, like, yeah, like you said, touching those objects, suddenly it becomes worthless. And then, you know, then it makes you question like your identity of like, okay, well, how should I carry myself and present myself to people? And, you know, where do I like stand within the community if I'm seen in this way automatically? Yeah,
that is so true. It's in, and it comes to the next question, like how does casteism exist in the communities as well? How does that affect communities collectively? Alia, do you want to go, or Shivani?
Yeah, so we were talking about this last time. I said something along the lines of when people find out what caste you're from, or they, you know, consciously are thinking about it, even if it's subconscious, they completely change the way they treat you. They change sort of the level of respect they have for you and the way they talk to you. So if you are from a lower caste, they'll talk down to you. And even if it's, you know, not conscious, as I said, it's just sort of so ingrained into their minds at such a young age that, you know, that's all they know, and it might not even be wrong to them. They're just so used to it. And I think that's what's so wrong.
Yeah, that's true. I think as well as like it's almost like a hushed thing in communities. It's very like behind closed doors of like what casteism is, and then say if you are of a higher caste, how you'll behave to sort of people, and the like privileges or like duties you have within that caste as well, how that's played out. And then for me, I feel like I'm quite lucky in the fact that my family doesn't have a lot of experience or personal experience with casteism. And it wasn't, I know it's the same as Alia, like my parents sheltered me from it a lot. Like I don't know a lot about casteism, and they tried to raise me in a way of that we just respect everyone equally, and not even think about something that's such an outdated system. And I just think I'm quite like lucky in that way of not being subjected to that kind of behavior.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I really respect my dad for more than a lot of people, because he prioritizes religion, and that's just like all about just be a good person. That's it. Just be nice to everyone, treat everyone equally, and just be a good person. Yeah,
that is really true. There is one experience like it's very recent thing, and it's again like similar in, not similar, but my parents or my grandparents were converted to Buddhism in 51 when Ambedkar did the conversion of lower caste people to Buddhism. So my parents were the one, or my grandparents were the one who got converted to Buddhism. And they were always taught, like they didn't tell me about my caste. They said, you are Buddhist, and you have to be just a good, kind person who treats other people kindly. And it's interesting how that hits with these outer discriminations which exist, even though you are considering yourself as a Buddhist person and like proud to be Buddhist. But then there are other discriminations which exist. Like there was this recent story which my dad was telling me. They live in a community where every caste lives, like the, you know, various caste lives, which wasn't true. Like in case of my parents, they used to like their parents used to live in like certain areas which are designated to caste. So like one of the Brahmin neighbor came to invite to the wedding of their daughter who lives in Australia, and they're like educated people. And so when someone comes to give you a good news, you give like sweets and water. So they didn't have, like my parents did that, like gave them water or sweets. They didn't touch the water, and they took like half sweet in their hand. And once they left, and they left the house, my dad saw them throwing that sweet. And and this is like a recent thing, and but you think that, okay, these are educated people, so you know they don't don't want to believe in discrimination, or they don't want to practice the discrimination. But it's just then I was questioning, like, what is education? Then it's not just about degree and certificate, it's also about the teachings, and it's also about how you treat other person. Do you treat with equality, or do you treat with these casteist or discriminative prejudices? And it really shook me up. And this was like last month or something like that. It's really disturbing to hear, especially when your parents, whom you respect so much, haven't given the same respect which they like have been told you to give others. And it's very frightening.
Thank you so much for sharing all of these experiences, Abhaya, Shivani, and Aaliah. I recognize that we have about 15 minutes left for today's conversation, and I'll start. I'm hoping that there will be other people who will be contributing questions in the chat, but maybe there are some comments in here that you might want to respond to as well in the process. But maybe just to lubricate the process, I'll start by asking a question that it's not really formed in my mind yet, but what I've seemed to be hearing from a lot of your experiences is that this idea of kind of sheltering, moving away from the idea of caste, rather than confronting in any way the difficulties that caste brings to people's attention, which is stratification of society, this hierarchical understanding of people, this predetermination of what a person's potential could be in their lives. And then also in Abhaya's situation with your family converting to Buddhism as well, also is almost like a sidestep. So it's this sort of strange, it's not strange, I mean, it's completely understandable, kind of not wanting to deal with it. I wonder, as art practitioners who are engaged now in a group like A Particular Reality that is explicitly trying to draw attention to anti-racism, how does this sort of work go alongside your struggles with understanding, taking on board what caste is in your lives?
I think that's a very interesting question, Sunshine. That's really, to be honest, APR was the first platform or first time when I talked about casteism openly. I didn't find any other group. I was, of course, talking to my best friends and my partner in intimate setting, but I never had the courage to talk about it to other people. And it's when you have the environment which you feel safer to talk about these complexities, that's when you can talk about, that's when you can feel open to reveal these identities of yourselves, which are not seen on the surface, but they exist in lived experiences and stories which we hear. And it's so important to have that, the place where you feel safe to talk about these things without getting judged, without getting without feeling or without making other people feel that you're the strange one, or what are you talking about, even though you don't have to understand it, you don't have to have the similar experiences, but the kindness or the understanding to understand. I think that's really important to have that. And I think that's one of the, like, APR was the first place where I started talking about it, and that's how I had the courage to make the film. And that's, like, of course, with my partner, and it's so important to have that for safe space to discuss these things.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and then there's also a really great reminder here in the chat from Parag as well, that it can't really be explained. It's almost, and it's parallels kind of all of your experiences tonight, and kind of it's almost this digging out of these experiences that have not really had any other platform to be sort of like properly stretched out and explored and unpacked. So maybe another way to kind of continue this conversation is to go back into the chat. I wonder for Shivani, Abhaya, and Aaliah, if there are any comments in there that people have made that you want to respond to. There were some really great ones, for instance, from Warsha, who's saying, who asked about the intergenerational aspect of it as well. But yeah, I wonder if anybody just wants to respond to anything. I'll give you a moment to have a look.
I think I feel like I'm the one who is the only one speaking. So please please intervene, Aaliah and Shivani. I found what Parag was saying interesting. Like constitutional amendment can't abolish caste system totally. Indian constitution do have articles to abolish untouchability. And I think it's so relevant because my parents could climb the economical ladder because of the quota system which exists in constitution. But then what about the social stigmas which attach? How you would make the laws, and you would, and that's what Ambedkar said in when he gave the constitution. It's because he was the architect of the constitution, and I have made the laws, but then if the people who are following the laws are not following socially, and it cannot just exist in the document, in the written document, it has to be practiced. And if that is not happening, then there is no use of constitution. And that's what he said, and I think that is so true. That is so true, and that's the reason why we are hearing about the casteism which exists even now after 75 years of independence. And yeah,
I think as well is that I think people are now becoming to like more like challenging it more and trying to change this sort of system and say that it shouldn't be as relevant as it is. And I'm hoping, I feel as though that there is a sort of shift in the fact that because of the younger generation, we are now becoming aware of it, but it's becoming our choice of not really implementing it. I know, even though that would give a lot of like, you know, negative backlash, but I think for me, it's like in the UK, I'm so fortunate I would be able to like climb up that ecological like step ladder and be able to go up further without being as like discriminated against or judged for. And I think it's starting to, I don't know, maybe a shift hopefully within the future of it not becoming as relevant or as sort of boxed in as it is. Yeah.
Can I also ask more specifically about your practices in relation to casteism? I remember in our preparation conversation that you all expressed a certain ambivalence, if that's the right word, towards like how you feel a certain responsibility bringing that into your practice, but yet also feeling some resistance towards it. Can any of you speak a little about that?
I feel like because casteism is such a huge topic, for me it was like questioning where I would even start of like breaking that down and like being able to express it in sort of a creative way, and also it not being such a overbearing, like burdening experience as well for the audience, because even for me it's like that exploration of my identity and then trying to be able to express it in a way that's understood by everyone and people who may not have a lot of history or knowledge on casteism.
Yeah, I think we also said last time that like we feel it shouldn't be our role to sort of educate people through our practice about what casteism is. They should feel the responsibility to sort of learn about it themselves. But at the same time, it's something that we do. I don't know about you guys, but it's something I do want to kind of express and sort of delve deeper into through my work as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had like for a long time I had I didn't know how to explore. I did have like urge and really want to talk about that, but I didn't know how to do that. So I think that's where the plural practices ideas came in the picture, and that again started with the conversation with Francesca, which is also there, and Sarah. And it's this because I do have the art practice, visual art practice, and then I thought if the topic of caste isn't coming organically in my visual art practice, can I have another practice, which is my filmmaking practice? And it felt with that medium, with my partner, with the collaboration, I could explore casteism and the urgency which I was feeling, and it just came so organically. I think the medium also allowed me to do that because I could, it wasn't, the camera wasn't just on me, it was I could frame it, and I could it's in a way this pressure of completely focusing on yourself can be really overwhelming. And this idea of camera has it can look into yourself, it can it can frame you yourself, and then also outside. So it's this idea of zoom in and zoom out, or seeing internally and seeing outside was something which allowed me to do that, and especially with my partner, which I could collaborate. So it just, I think this, and especially I didn't want to force myself to bring that in my visual practice, but then can I have multiple practices? And that was another thing which definitely came from APR.
Yes, I really, it's really interesting to hear this idea of multiple practices, of having not just one dedicated approach to your work as if it's like this one big monolith, but these little tributaries that maybe all the, you know, they all branch out to these little tributaries rather. Yeah. We have a couple of minutes left now, and I don't want to take over too much talking space. I wonder if anybody else in the chat wants to take this opportunity to ask any final questions, and if not, then I'll leave it to our three speakers to maybe just say any final things you would like to kind of put out yeah, say any final things you want to say, basically.
We discussed earlier, we will talk about this killing of a 9-year-old Dalit boy who got killed because he touched the water pot of upper caste person, and we wanted to acknowledge that because this is what is happening. This happened last July 2022, which is and he died on 14th of August. We wanted to acknowledge that because this is creating a lot of massive protest in India. And I just thought I'll end. I wanted to say this quote by Brecht. I think I put that in the chat earlier. In the dark times, will they also be singing? Yes, they will also be singing about the dark times. And I think having this conversation was liberating in its way, and it was empowering as well. So talking in itself is a practice, and sharing as a practice as well. And yeah, I wanted to say that.
Thank you so much, Abhaya. How about Aaliyah and Shivani? Any final thoughts from you?
Just adding on to what she just said, I think that is quite important to mention, because it's not only highlighting that it's still very relevant today and sort of how extreme it is as well, but also, as you said, talking about it and addressing it and just sharing sort of our own experiences and sort of putting it out there on a platform is like an act of protest as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were saying how, what could we do in a way to sort of challenge this, and what we would do as a protest. And in earlier meetings, I think it was like the first one that JJ Chan mentioned, that a protest doesn't have to be violent. It could just be something where words of talking, and how we say that like words have power, and being able to talk about it really destigmatizes this conversation, and being able to really confront these ideas and confront these systems that have happened and affected us for years. I just think it was just a really interesting way of saying that we can do something. It doesn't have to be an act of violence.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need to be sheltering from it or like avoiding it. We can address it in a more gentle way. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just really honored that Harshlight has been one of these platforms where you feel safe enough to have a go at teasing all of these really, really complex and difficult and deeply embedded things out. And I feel like maybe this is just a beginning of a conversation that will have to continue. And maybe Harshlight at another stage can be yet another step for you to do that, or elsewhere. I really look forward to seeing where this goes, and finding out more about this. Thank you so much for choosing us to share this conversation. And also to everyone who has shown up today and listening in, and thank you for your comments as well in the chat. My thank you to Heather and to Vicky, who are our BSL interpreters tonight. Thank you. And Sarah Howe, who has been doing the recording and the tech support, and is also a co-organizer and a part of a particular reality. So thank you, everybody. If I can ask the interpreters, the speakers, and Sarah to just stick around just to check in, that would be great. But everybody else, thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.